Okay guys, so just a quick video on bass, and I guess this really could apply to a lot of different things, but when it comes to advanced production, in the case of kind of the school that I come out of, which is just getting things done, um, it's going to depend on the tools, obviously. There's a lot of great info in the 30-day power production course. If you don't have iZotope, and if you don't have, I guess, for a broad way of saying it, good or great plugins. Um, so to kind of avoid, which this still won't, but to kind of avoid the haters, the sticklers, the people who are going to say every situation is different, um, we're going to get into a video here. And they are right. Every situation is different, and there's nothing that will really truly surpass years of hard work, studying, and even more so than studying, just doing, getting to work, hearing what you did, and then thinking about what you don't like, if there is anything, and then correcting that. Um, a real messy but effective way to gloss over everything is just to A/B your stuff with a reference. I've said that many times before, and if you've got a quality WAV file reference or high quality MP3 reference to compare your stuff to, trust your ears. I mean, whether you're using Waves plugins or stock plugins or compression or no compression, generally speaking, if your stuff sounds like your reference to the end user, there really shouldn't be too much of a problem. If you want to say scientifically, quote unquote, there might be problems, sure. Are your transients completely out of whack because you're not using compression? Maybe. Does that really affect the end user though, just listening to your music at the gym? It could, but probably not. And I know that's going to make a lot of people upset, but so with all that said, being that every situation is different, I wanted to show you a website that I forgot to mention in the actual course, but this can be very helpful if you do not have Neutron from Ozone, or if you're not going to follow the 30-day power production course method of using Voxengo Span to also show you masking. And the only difference between Span and Neutron is one takes time but is free, and the other takes no time at all but costs a pretty penny. Work up to it like I did. So what you can do though basically is you'll know what key you're in, obviously, because you have a cohesive song that's building, and all you have to do is compare what notes you're hitting. Like, let's say you're in the key of G, you're basically at 49 hertz, so you can go into your session and you know that if there's a problem frequency on that low G at 49 hertz, you can, we'll take 2, and it's a notch, and basically bring this down to 49 hertz, which now it's exactly there. Tighten up the Q on it, and now you have just dipped by 5 decibels at 49 hertz. Let's say your kick is there and you need to dip that frequency out of your bass, or let's say your bass is there and you need to dip this frequency out of your kick. This is static though, as I've mentioned before, and this is why I recommend Neutron. Now of course you can go the opposite way as well and go up, but anyways, like I was saying with the static thing, if this were a dynamic EQ like Neutron, it's going to move like a side chain every time whatever needs to be ducked out of the way hits. This will move, so that can be very helpful. So just know that, and then the only other thing I wanted to mention, guys, is that if you're not using advanced plugins or very top of the line plugins like I recommend in the advanced production course, you may need compression, and I'll show you why right here. So without compression, take a look at these notes. And let me just turn this to high res so you can really see. I'm used to Neutron where you can expand and make this way bigger, but look at where some notes are hitting. They might be up at like -30. So this line going all the way across, if I can keep my mouse straight. And some might be hitting closer to -35, which is this line going across. That's inconsistency in volume, which can happen with bass. And if it's a problem, which you really kind of won't know without obviously listening, you might need to export and listen on bigger speakers to really see if it's a problem in a live, loud sound system setting. Maybe take it down to your local Guitar Center and crank it on one of their PA systems. Tell them you're thinking about buying a PA, but you want to test out some music on it. But if you kind of want to nip it in the bud before exporting and doing all that, you can use compression. So let's see if these notes are a problem. I think they are. Let's see. And what I'm doing is using the what do they call this? I think a crosshatch, the cross that is always on my pointer here, the white lines going side to side and up and down. I apologize if that's not what it's called, it's just not coming to mind, but I'm looking at that and seeing what notes hit the line from left to right, what notes go past that line and above it, and what notes go below it and don't even get to it. So you can even see now right where my mouse is, there's inconsistency there. Just watch, right where that mouse is. You can see there's a note that's much louder than the other one as far as where it's registering here. So a little compression might not be a bad idea here. Let's turn our compressor on and crank down on it. And see, because the compressor is before span, we should be able to see this stuff getting taken care of in real time. My cat is right here with me, just walking all over the keyboard. This is cranked down pretty good at a ratio of 4. What you could do, and this pretty much goes back to the same lesson as the 30-day power production course, is take a brick wall to chop off the transients, if you will. And then what you can do is lay into this with lighter compression. So, and this is in the 30-day, it's getting the transients and then getting the body. And what I'm looking at generally is the difference between the notes that are jumping. You're never going to well, I shouldn't say you're never, but the goal isn't necessarily to get just a flat line across where every single note is hitting whatever, -30 or -35. The goal is to just reel it in a little bit so it's not such such big peaks between notes, you know, like some are down here and others are up here, just to tame it. And I really don't see too much of a problem. I would ease up on this, to be honest. And you can hear it, it gives it some body. And if we had anything else in this session as a reference, we'd probably turn the volume back up, although the makeup gain is on. But I just wanted to throw that out there, guys, because sometimes you will need compression to control different notes, especially if this were maybe even a little bit lower. So for example, which we're in, I think a C minor pentatonic, I think is what I made this in. You could select all, shift down. Maybe not the best baseline sound for this. You probably would switch this to some kind of more of like a sine wave. I mean, I guess you could be a stickler about that and grab the peaks. My cat is going nuts behind me. Grab the peaks. Maybe lay into the body a little. And you can kind of see how nothing now is going above -24, or very little is. You know, but I mean, to my ears, just kind of trying to make a quick tutorial here, it sounds pretty good. And then once you have a kick in there, and you're side chaining the two, and you're using neutron for masking, or setting up the longer way with span for masking, it should be fine. I don't, you know, a lot of people kind of stress and kind of overthink it, but we're just trying to get music out. So you sacrifice a little time with me now to be able to fly later. Being that this is in the C minor pentatonic as well, you can do one last thing with that website I showed you. You can unfold these notes, and then you can look at any notes basically that are not in your C minor pentatonic scale, for example C sharp and D, right? And if you do see inside of span here any notes, maybe C sharp or D, you can use your EQ to notch them out. So I really don't see too much of a problem looking closely, because obviously those notes aren't being played. But if for some reason you felt like you really needed to clean up the mix and were having unusually odd problems, or just a tad bit OCD more than me, you can go in here and you could look at, say, notes at 36.7. Or go up an octave to the next D, notes at 73.4, and notch that out. So 73.4, and come over here to 2, 73.4, whoops, notch that out. And now you know that that D, that may be a problem around the kick, is pretty well gone at, you know, 8 dB, a pretty tight Q on there too. Not much of a difference in sound, obviously, which is generally a good thing. Just notching out the problem EQ or the problem frequency. So I hope that helped you guys and kind of just expanded on you can dig in if need be. You can use compression if need be. You can go back and use the 30-day power production course techniques if need be. They're not just for beginners. It's stuff that I use every day. It's just that I tend to not really worry a whole lot about that stuff simply because when you have other things kind of in place like Neutron that's taking care of the masking anyways, this kind of stuff kind of becomes less of a problem. And when you're using synthesizers over, say, a human playing bass, big time compression isn't usually that big of a deal. The only time I've really found it to be a real big deal is when I've got like a sine wave that's super low, a real subby sine wave, and you can just hear, like in hip hop or something, if I'm mixing a hip hop tune or mastering a hip hop tune, you can just hear that the shifting of notes, you know, a bass line as a sine wave real low really shifts the energy, and you'll just hear it. You'll hear just a jump in volume, you know, say from like a C sine wave super low that goes up to like an E. So let's look at our chart again. A C, well, 32 is pretty darn low. So the next jump up is 65. So maybe from 65.4 up to 82, C to E, right? C to E. When that note goes from C to E, or when the frequency shifts from 65 to 82, you can just hear a big jump in volume and energy. You might think about controlling that with compression, or going into your MIDI and looking where that note is, you know, and just maybe lowering down so that it's not so insane. Because those super low subby notes, when they shift in energy like that, sometimes it can be a little bit detrimental to the mix. But I've heard plenty of mixes too where it sounds like they let the energy shift, and there's clearly one note in that bass line of like either a trap tune or a hip hop tune or just something with like super low subby bass lines, and the energy jumps, and you know, you hear it as the song moves on, and the bass line continues to loop, and it's just apparently not that big of a deal. So it just depends, you know. When in doubt, obviously take care of it, because once it's exported and you're playing it live, there's not much you can do about it. So it's better to tame it while you have the chance. But I've heard plenty where it's not perfectly tamed. The bass line is not totally crushed with compression to keep all the notes consistent, and it's still pretty okay. But that's usually because it's a clean arrangement and there's space. You know, it sounds sparse, and the song will tolerate that. If it's a very dense arrangement, maybe something like Big Room House with a ton of layers of sub bass, regular bass, you know, kind of mid bass into mids, and into upper mids, into high. There's just stuff everywhere in the frequency spectrum. I would say then things need to be pretty tamed. Nothing should really jump out too much if you've got like everything going as one unified chord pattern. So, alright guys, hope that helps you. I'll see you in the next video.